Hey everybody, welcome to the week 1 CG discussion for our series that is going to lead us up to our Christmas celebration. I'm joined today by Blake Clickner. He is the campus pastor out at Kaufman and has been with Sea Life since we started, basically.
6 months after you started, yeah.
Yeah, and you worked really cheap for the first how long?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
How much you get paid?
I think I got a love offering of about $100 once.
And I think we took him out to eat once. So anyway, if you see Blake, be sure to give him some encouragement. He's definitely been an instrumental
Definitely
part.
not there anymore.
A what?
I'm definitely not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm making double.
Making double.
Yeah.
We taking you out to eat twice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. I feel like we're chasing a rabbit. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is leading up to our Christmas celebration, and we chose to call this series He Shall Be Called, and we took that from Isaiah chapter 9, starting in verse 6, and it says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name," here it is, "shall be called." And then it gives us some identifiers as to what could be expected in this Messiah that was coming. And this prophecy was given to King Ahaz, and it went while King Ahaz was ruling. And it says this, that he will be called a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. And we just felt like those were some designations that would be important to discuss as we move toward Christmas. And so, Blake, just maybe kind of off the top of your head, why do you think it was important to God to communicate to us that His coming to earth in the person of Jesus would provide for us a counselor? Like, why do you think that was an important thing from God's perspective? Why do we need a counselor?
Well, I would say just one of the things with God Himself, He's not far. He's here. He's present. He's close, and that idea of a counselor, you think about they're the ones that listen to you, and they're this idea that God's not this distant deity, but He's more with us. Like when it talks about Emmanuel, even, He's here amongst us, but it's also in that passage talking about His reign and His power, but then also counselor kind of brings it close to home.
Yeah. So typically when you go to a counselor, unless you're going into a known group setting, you assume that it's just going to be you and one other person. And what's the role of the counselor in that setting? It's to listen and to, I think probably more importantly, help kind of move us out of brokenness and toward healing and wholeness. Yeah. So in your experience as a pastor who's counseled with people, I got to be careful. We're not technically counselors, but we have an opportunity to visit with people. Why do you think it's important for people, whenever they sit down with a counselor, to be honest and to really desire change? Because I don't know if your experience is the same as mine. Sometimes people ask, hey, would you meet with my husband, or would you meet with my daughter, or whatever? And I'm like, well, I will, but do they want to meet with me? Why is it important for the person who's sitting down with a counselor to want healing, to want to be heard, to want to move to a different place in their spirit?
Yeah, I've had those situations where someone's like, hey, can you meet with this person? And it puts you in a weird situation. Now you've got to call or text and be like, hey, can you meet? And they're like, why? And so then you have to talk about that situation. But I think when I'm sitting down with somebody who wants to go to counseling, if you're not honest, I can't help you. Like I'm working with a facade, and I'm not working with the real issue. And many times when I do counseling, you've probably figured this out too, or have done a lot of this, that you'll get this initial, here's the problem, but you're not hitting the core. And so they want to deal with just what the problem is and not talk about the core. Well, if you're not honest with me, I can't talk about the core. I'm dealing with a different exterior, or like I think about it like in Shrek, where he talks about the onion, I'm dealing with the outside of something that's not real. So when you're honest with the counselor, when you're honest with God, and which is funny with God, I mean, He knows your motive, He knows your heart, He knows your thoughts. So being honest with Him, or not being honest with Him, or not being honest with the counselor, actually harms you in a way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you came around to that, because the difference between you as a counselor and God as a counselor,
Yeah.
is that honesty on behalf of the one being counseled isn't as much for the benefit of God.
No.
It doesn't benefit him at all for you to be
No.
honest. Being honest with him as a wonderful counselor benefits you,
Yes. Yeah.
and like really beginning to own some of the things that you're dealing with and some of the brokenness, whatever. So maybe that's a thing that people in their groups could talk about. You know, why is it difficult sometimes to be honest with a counselor? And maybe one of the answers is because you got to first be honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's huge.
Before you could ever really be honest with somebody else. But in your groups, maybe that's something you could talk about, is that tendency for us to kind of skew the truth a little bit, to continue to protect that which is, ironically enough, that which is broken,
Yeah.
And thereby really hindering the ability for it to be healed. So why do you think we're timid when it comes to opening up our lives to other people? So maybe it's with a counselor that we're a little bit scared to do that. That's one illustration. But even in the groups, as people are meeting together as a group, why do you think we have a tendency to be so timid? Because right now somebody's listening and they're going, man, I got some stuff I really feel like I should share and maybe would be healthier if I did share, but I'm not going to share. Why do you think that people stop short of that?
Man, that hits really close to home. I'm good at sharing what's easy, but I'm not good at sharing what's hard, because I'm fearful of what others think about me. I'm of the personality that I want to control what people think about me. I want to control really everything in a way. And so for me to be open and honest amongst other people means I have to trust them a lot. And there's that fear and there's that timidity that steps in. And I believe it's the enemy, oftentimes in CGs, that'll step in. Even though you're doing really godly things and Christ-centered things, there's always that, no, you're not ready for that. That if you do that, it's going to cost you a lot. You know, but what I believe is that we've got to press into that some. All right, because God was not caught off guard that those people are in that room. God was not caught off guard by those thoughts that are in your head right now and that heart beating, that sometimes you got to go and step in and go, you know what, I'm going to lay it out and I'm going to trust you guys and I'm going to trust God to use you guys to really bring healing to me. And I think it's one of those things that we get comfortable in a way of, I'm okay with being who I am right now. And then nowhere in life are we okay with just kind of being right here, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think people get comfortable in the dysfunction.
Yes.
Or with the dysfunction. You know, so if somebody opens up in a CG, this is one of the things that I've always found, like just even as a pastor or leader leading a community group, and maybe you've got some insight into this. Sometimes I think people are a little scared to open up because suddenly it's almost like it empowered everybody else in the circle or everybody else in the room to say, well, I think you should, and I think you should, or I feel you should, or whatever else. So there's probably some balance there somewhere to where, that group, God ordained that group to be there. Are they always there to give what they think somebody should do or should feel? Or are sometimes, are those people there by God's design to just listen and to pray, you know, and how do you distinguish?
Well, I think about where it talks about confession, you know, and it's good. And for us, listening is a huge part. In fact, actually, one of my favorite college classes, I actually took listening, which you work with me, so you don't know whether or not I do really well in that class or not.
I have an idea.
Yeah. But the idea is this, is that we spend so much time teaching people how to speak and teaching people how to write and communicate towards the receiver. But we don't spend hardly any time practicing what it is to communicate back to the person who's speaking that I've heard you, you know? And so for some of you in your CG, it may be a good habit just to go, so you said this, and kind of take what they said and just say it in a small sentence and send it back to them and allow them to elaborate. And what you're going to find is people will dig in a little bit more. And what you do in that process is you're building trust. Going, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say to you, but I'm actually absorbing what you're saying and then wanting to try to dig in more for you. The other thing is, and what you brought up about people who like to come in and give ideas and this is what you should do, I tend to be a little bit of that person. It's got to be spirit driven. And so for those who are sitting in the CG and you're going, man, they're stepping on my toes. I'm always that person. I would actually step on your toes a little bit more and say, hey, when you do that, is it spirit driven, or is this just, hey, I'm shooting off the cuff?
Yeah, and I think probably a way to check and balance that, because anytime we feel like the urge to say something, I think we go, oh, yeah, it's spirit, totally. You know, I'm here tonight to really save this person in their situation or whatever. But it could be that if every comment is I think or I feel, and it's never, hey, let me just kind of guide you back to some spiritual truth and scriptural truth or whatever, it may not be spirit driven. It may be just wanting to jump in. So yeah, I think that, you know, the wonderful counselor, what we talked about on Sunday was, what does a good counselor in the flesh need in order to help move you toward healing? And they need you to be honest. They need you to want to change. They need you to put into practice the things that you're being told and things. Well, the same is true of the wonderful counselor, because he's not just a counselor or a good counselor. He is the friend that sticks closer than brother. He is the father to the fatherless. He is the savior of the world, the light of the world, the way, the truth, and life. No other way to the Father except through him. I mean, that's who this wonderful counselor is. And I think, you know, one of my favorite parts of the message on Sunday, and I'll just kind of close with this, maybe your group can talk about how this kind of lands in your spirit, is one thing that a good counselor in the flesh is going to require is at some point they're going to look at their watch and say, our time is up. Yeah. And they're going to say, now you owe me $80, $120, $250, all depending on what degree they have. Yeah. And that's fair. And we have to pay for that because of what we're receiving. And the beautiful thing about Christmas is this promise of God was that he was going to send in the person of Christ a wonderful counselor who would in fact ultimately pay the price so that we could find healing. Yeah. And he paid that price on the cross. And so to me, that was just kind of the icing on the cake, the big bow on the top of the gift that reminds me that I need to be honest. I need to want to change. I've got to put into practice the things that the Scripture teaches. Yeah. But more than anything, I need to appreciate this Christmas season that God in his mercy has already paid the price for every failure I've had, every brokenness that's a part of who I am, and is wanting to raise me up out of that. So any last quick thoughts?
Man, I think the big thing is the cross. I mean, we celebrate Jesus' birth and the gift that he is to us, but then going to the cross, and the cross brings just new hope and new beginnings. And so if you're sitting there and you're going, man, I need that counselor, we want you to reach out. There are great counselors in our church. We would love to pastorally counsel with you. But at the same time, also, if you don't know Jesus, drive into that, because it may be that you just need the freedom from Jesus in that. And I know someone in your CG probably would love to share that with you. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good word. All right, week 1, he shall be called, what's he going to be called? Wonderful Counselor.
It's good stuff.